Good morning, comic book fans. Welcome back to Comics in 5 Minutes. Fuck guys, I'm your ever-loving host, Shorty. We're going to look at Red Roots today. This is one that, I hate to say it, didn't really make much impact when people were advance ordering it in my store. There was only one person who put down for it. But when I was placing the order, I clicked the link to see what was going on with it, see if it was something I thought might appeal. And I liked the cover. And I know we get told not to judge books by that very metric. But in this particular case, it's a good example of artistry, because it's the same artist doing internal stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this is good stuff. It looks creepy, looks suspenseful. It makes me want to find out more of what's going on. And although overall it absolutely finished in that state for me, I've got to say the opening few pages, I was like, oh, I think I may have misjudged this. And it kind of comes down to the idea that it's a bit of a John Wick kind of moment for the first few pages. It's that one guy going and being amazing and kicking all kinds of ass, and it carries on throughout as like a broken narrative thing. And I don't mind it in an action movie kind of way. I think it's fun, not particularly high intensity intellectually, but certainly in terms of visual spectacle, it works. But I also kind of help but feel that whenever I see that, I feel like the only real, the major point people want to get across is this idea of the male power fantasy that, is there to appeal to people who probably look quite a lot like me, who think that, with enough will and training from multiple disciplines, with an awful lot of very expensive trainers and access to advanced weaponry, and, gumption, that they, if were in a situation where they needed to fight their way to save somebody, could totally do it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I see why that's something people would push out there, because it's got a market. It clearly does. Look at all the movies. But it just makes me think there's not going to be much else on offer in terms of, depth to the story. But this one doesn't do that. For a start, it's two different narratives. They both are, at the point you're going to enjoy most of it, totally separate. And I will say, as much as I was like, okay, it's just a John Wick kind of thing, excuse me, it is a really good John Wick kind of thing. Very early on, it becomes very clear that the artist-writer, sorry, I'm checking name here, I'm bad with names, Lorenzo De Felici, absolutely knows how to block a fight scene. It is something which I find mildly frustrating in TV shows and movies. It's not too bad, because generally you get a more visual sense of movement with it, but sometimes in books, both comic books and just, prose, it seems like some people don't spend enough attention on where people actually are standing in a fight, and where if they move they're going to encounter something else, and if we get a change of viewpoint, where has that person gone. This absolutely nails it. There's quite frenetic action in multiple fight scenes, and every single beat it feels like this has been 100% well thought out, so there is a flow to the fight which is both narratively satisfying and visually brilliant. In terms of visuals, I will give one minor criticism, and this is only a minor one. It's certainly not going to stop me enjoying it. But when we're outside of the action, sometimes some background characters and background art assets just look a little bit flat. Considering how good the dynamic stuff is through most of it, and how good the use of colouring and shading is to really give these like individual characters, individual moments, a sense of depth within the world, rather than just being one two-dimensional bit of art. Every once in a while, it just feels like maybe had to hurry a little bit and didn't put their full care and attention that we know we can do into the rest of it. But like I say, very minor criticism, because the rest of it is brilliant, and the story's good as well. Like, the other half of the story that isn't John Wick gun-fu action is more day in the life of kind of thing, and because it is such a different narrative tone and pacing, it did make me think, well, this has got to be something going on here. And yeah, there is something going on, something very, very weird, something very, very unsettling, and there's such a beautiful job of building up that sense. Like, when something weird happens first, you're like, God, that's weird. Like, it's almost like you're engaging and sharing with the shock that the characters in the comic book are going through. But because the creator takes their time quite a lot, and we have that other narrative playing in, which has its own mystery, its own story that's going on, its own characters to develop, as well as looking awesome, we get a very slow burn to reveal that there is a hell of a lot more going on, that the weirdness is only just starting, and it builds and builds and builds, and as it does, we get more sense of character, more sense of world, more sense of story. And when we get to the end of chapter 1 of both arcs, we realise that this isn't just the story we think it is. There is more going on. Now, it doesn't set it up as a mystery boxing, which I quite like, because I've been turned off by comics to try to do that. This just feels along the lines of, no, this is just chapter 1. This isn't something where we're now going to sprinkle extra little clues over it for however many years or volumes. You're going to be like, no, come back, because you need to find out what's going on. And the end of issue 1 leaves so much promise of delivery. I really hope that issue 2 managed to nail that continuity and actually maintain that like rise and fall of tension, the brutality of the combat, and the soft serenity and wonderful writing of the more down-to-earth scenes, because there's a lot to pull off here, and I've got to say, issue 1 impressed me on how effectively it did that. That's it for me for now, though. Until I see you all again, look after each other, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.